also interesting as far as research is concerned is in the basic research department of statistics, they started research with computers in the sense that long before it was accepted that you could put tests on the computer, they already did so, in the sense that they, for instance, put certain tests on some of those very big computers, trying to get things like the Rorschach and so on going, which is important because it was long before the challenges that we are faced now developed. Particularly Malcolm Coulter, he loves computers, and he really enjoyed playing around with different ways. He invariably needed a new computer because his ideas were growing bigger and bigger. But that in itself, although it was a basic research department, brought in money. And then just before I left there, very interesting, the theme started developing on artificial intelligence. That research should be done on the whole concept of artificial intelligence. I've just thought of some more groundbreaking research that I think merits attention. Initially, very early on, just after the NIPR was established, the researchers were asked to do some work in the mines, and amongst others, it was a problem of communication. Somebody like Scotty Hudson was quite interested in seeing how could he improve on communication. So what he did is he thought, let's make posters so that whenever they walk anywhere, they are reminded of don't walk upstairs. See that things are done correctly. So he had these posters made, but unluckily some of the posters were interpreted in a different way than they should be. For instance, in one poster where it shows that the man is climbing a ladder, it was interpreted that, poor man, he's lost his leg. Another thing they did at the mines was the general adaptability battery that was developed and is still relevant today. They would make a film of it so that the miners could come in and they would get them to think about things and so on. And then they found that in showing the little film, the miners fell asleep because they had to get up very early in the morning and they had to come to work without food. So, wow, we're going to see this film so we can relax. Those practicalities that one had to think of in terms of South Africa. Then we have, as far as tests are concerned, somebody like Jerry Grant with spatial thinking and concept research. How do people spatially perceive? How conceptual, what do they do with it? Based again on the kind of work that somebody like Scotty Hudson and so on done. Johan Skeppers was involved in that as well. Third last, I think perhaps second last one is the form series test. A form series test was developed, again, trying to tap potential from people who cannot read or write. So there's a test where you have to take certain forms and put them in certain ways, almost like the Raven's progressive matrices, but of a different nature. What Ian Kendall, I think, was involved in that. And then one aspect that I really should not forget about is Dr. Rooyening's Bushman work. Dr. Rooyening and his wife, and later Wendy Winter, did a lot of work with the Bushmen, getting to know them, getting to get a feel of their cultures, the way of doing things, the way of dealing with the needs for subsistence and aspects like that. And that meant that the team would very often go out and spend weeks, 10 days, perhaps even more, in the desert with the Bushmen. And some of the ladies who were with them, one for instance, indicated that it was absolutely fascinating that after having sat there and discussed with them, they would ask the question, now, if you had a choice in life, what would you like? What would you want? And the answer individually from all of them came, we have food, we have a place to live, we have our family. What else do we want? Which gives you an identification of the rural environment and how comfortable they were. Now, Wendy Winter, for instance, did research there with awareness of colors. How do they differentiate colors? And for that, she had a pyramid of colors that they had to look at and identify the differences for them. And she found that basically it was similar to what you would find in any other place. There was also work done, I think, the rod and frame test, which was used again for pilots. To what extent are you environment embedded, or to what extent can you move beyond the embeddedness? All of these are aspects that were developed innovatively, not things that necessarily could be copied. So that what I try to identify is, and there are so many names that I could still mention that I haven't mentioned, but what I would try to identify is the fact that the work in the research, NIPR Research Institute integrated the biological, what happens in my mind, the psychological, how do I develop as an individual, and the environmental, to what extent does the environment impinge on all of this for me as an individual? And I think that was the initial notice, the initial message that Dr. Bisseville gave to us. Look at the human being as a gestalt. The human being cannot be cut down into pieces. The human being is a unique individual with unique potential. And we must try and tap that potential. We must try and determine how can we let each and every person develop to full potential, taking into account the fact that we come from different environments with different cultural expectations, and that must be taken into account when we are trying as psychologists to assess them.